The first 8 months of this time period were filled with milestones. This was on the heels of CADRE concluding our strategic planning with a commitment to continue pursuing our North Star and to double down on our work from 2020 to 2025 by broadening and deepening our impact. We were well on our way. Our movement building capacity was on the rise again. These beautiful images come from a summer of convening and organizing, one of our greatest summers of doing so. In July 2019, as part of the DSC California Parent Organizing Work Group, we co-led the effort to convene nearly 80 parents from LA, the Bay Area, the Inland Valley, the Central Coast, and the Central Valley regions of the state for a one-day political education exchange in Fresno to support parent organizing to end the school-to-prison pipeline. In English and Spanish, parents learned about the roots of today's oppression from both the 500-year history as well as 50 years of data that linked the school-to-prison pipeline to the origin story of this country, as well as the backlash to civil rights victories through criminalization of poverty and the war on drugs. Parents from more than a dozen community-based organizations met, engaged, learned together, and built consciousness and leadership together. We focused on strengthening a shared historical understanding and political analysis, challenging the ideas and ideologies that keep the school-to-prison pipeline in place and part of this country's addiction to mass incarceration. Trusting that once we understood our interdependent and linked histories, there will be a path. We focused on building Black and Brown solidarity statewide, just like we did in South LA. Parents received the gift of a call to action from civil and human rights icon Dolores Huerta, who joined us for the day and invested in grassroots organizing as she always does. From there, parents created action steps to bring the political education back home to their organizations. It was an incredibly beautiful day. At home, we're going back to basics, and we're planning to launch an annual summer assembly, backed by 6 weeks of outreach to engage and bring in new parents. We saw this as the relaunching of a yearly recruitment drive at the beginning of the school year that would feed into our academy, which had become an academic year-long program, and into our parent-led monitoring of school climate and implementation of the School Climate Bill of Rights. In late August 2019, we held our first assembly at Chuco's Justice Center, and similar to our statewide exchange the month prior, engaged current and new parents in understanding history and data, and sharing parent stories of how their families and communities have been impacted by the school-to-prison pipeline. It was a day of community and possibilities of new parent leadership. We were on the move and ready for a game-changing year. 2020 kicked off with the settlement of our literacy lawsuit after more than 2 years, resulting in a 3-year grant program to support literacy attainment at 75 schools across the state. And while we did not get everything we wanted, we made some more history by establishing a right to literacy in California. Like everyone else, we had no idea that the past 8 months would not happen again in the same way for the foreseeable future. We had no idea what game-changing would mean. CADRE responded to the global pandemic and shutdown like so many others by focusing on our community's survival. We leveraged the close relationships with parents that we had built through CADRE to be there for our families. And also, like so many other organizing groups, we focused on making sure our parents had the most up-to-date and accurate information. We marshaled all the resources we could spare to provide what we call solidarity aid in the form of monthly gift cards, personal protective equipment, groceries, and school supplies when we could get donations. We did our best to close the digital divide by providing our parents with Wi-Fi hotspots and tablets. We walked each and every family through their internet access, email setup, Zoom setup, and when needed, their kids set up for remote emergency instruction. The silver lining of making the switch to Zoom meetings was that we ended up having unexpected upticks in parent turnout. Without having to physically get to the office with their children, we welcomed back some parents who had stopped coming. We were able to maintain engagement with all of our existing families, as well as integrate a handful of new parents. We adapted our academy and parent monitoring to an online, bilingual format. The learning curve to meeting online was shorter than expected, and on many evenings we were actually amazed at our parents' resilience, at their continued commitment to their own leadership development, to remaining in community with other parents, to Black and Brown solidarity. Something special was happening in CADRE, despite the ravages and tragedies of the global pandemic. with our staff stepping up to do everything in new ways and continuing to discover the unique opportunity we had as an organization to be there for our families, our parent leaders were matching our commitment and motivating us to keep going beyond our expectations, to keep imagining new ways we could still build relationships, organize, and mobilize parents without straining them or taking away from their need to adapt to the new economic, health, and educational conditions. Bottom line, our parents were not letting the pandemic get in the way of their continued and even stepped-up participation in CADRE. And all of those parents from the summer before who gathered in Fresno, they formed demands to protect students' and parents' rights during emergency online schooling, and in order to enact them, recommitted to a monthly online political education and power analysis exchange. Nearly 70 parents and organizers gathered once a month while the pandemic ravaged our society and worked to redefine parent power. It often left us speechless and astounded at parents' willingness to keep organizing, keep building a movement. In 2020 and 2021. George Floyd's murder ushered in a moment that CADRE and our allies in DSC, California have been preparing for years. This included, along the way, full engagement in the racial justice reckoning around anti-Blackness and law enforcement as a tool of white supremacy. We reimagine safety in ways that dismantle both, as well as create humanizing conditions for Black life. We rally to see the Black Organizing Project's campaign victory come to fruition in June 2020 with the elimination of the Oakland School Police Department. We joined forces with Students Deserve and the Brothers, Sons, Selves Coalition to be the brave, parent-centered organization to support an immediate reduction of the LA School Police Department budget so that those dollars could be reinvested in decriminalizing and transforming our school climates for Black students in particular, knowing that when we do, everybody wins. It was a leap forward for us and a test of Black and brown solidarity, but we had been working towards this for years, ever since we saw the link between school discipline and mass incarceration in the early 2000s. It was not automatic, and we worked to make sure parents were in full understanding of not just what a reduction of the school police budget meant, but how school policing came about and how it was the next benchmark towards achieving CADRE's vision. We were grateful to still be in the fight, to be able to leverage all of our work to join with others in making history, in charting the way towards redefining safety in our schools, and as always, recognizing the sanctity of Black life so that our Black and brown communities thrive. By the spring and summer of 2021, we, along with everyone else, celebrated resilience. We celebrated our parents' resilience, ushering their kids through graduation and matriculating to the next level after a year of remote instruction. We celebrated CADRE turning 20 years old. We celebrated CADRE's national impact being documented in a new, first-of-its-kind book. We celebrated our parents' resilience in maintaining their presence in a Black and brown community against all the odds and despite all of their challenges, grief, and uncertainty about the future. The Zoom platform opened up new ways to build together, to express South LA parent joy, to organize, train, and empower. And we celebrated an upcoming transition in leadership, the stepping down of our co-founder and founding executive director after 20 years, to make way for a new generation of leadership. Announcing this transition was a moment that also defied the odds. It meant that CADRE was strong and steady enough to move through yet another major transformation. As we march towards that moment, with the second year of adapting to the pandemic behind us, but the repair of anti-Blackness still a long way ahead of us, we place our determination, hope, and confidence in everything that has been collectively built, in the staffing model and organizational culture guided by clear values, narratives, and principles when it comes to humanizing Black and brown South LA parents and believing in their capacity to transform the struggle for racial justice in our schools. In the parent leadership development model undergirded by radical Black and brown solidarity with marginalized parents and shared accountability for community self-determination. In the transformative power of our North Star and vision of seeing humanizing schools that value Black and brown families' wellness en route to a new definition of safety. We place our future as always, in South LA parent love. Thank you for listening and watching each of our behind-the-scenes videos celebrating CADRE's 20 years. We hope that you will continue to follow our story, and whenever the next video gets made, we hope you will tune in then as well.